The film tells the story of a devout man who used to be a hitman. He wants to make up for his past by taking down the drug cartels he once worked for. But can he truly be forgiven for his crimes? MC Recap introduces Pardo, a religious man who attends church regularly. One day, while entering the church, Pardo noticed something strange. He saw a panicked man hiding something inside a flower pot. Curious and suspicious, Pardo followed him to the harbor. There, he watched as the man was confronted by 4 others who demanded a bag full of money. They questioned him and repeatedly pushed his head underwater by the shore. Even though he was almost beaten to death, the man kept saying he knew nothing about the bag. When they couldn't get any answers, the 4 men left. Pardo then came closer and realized the man was Augustin. Pardo stepped in to help Augustin. Augustin asked him to take him to his friend Antonia's house. When they arrived, Antonia opened the door and let them in. Seeing how badly Augustin was hurt, she told her son to stay with his aunt. In truth, the boy was very sick and needed surgery to get better, but Antonia had to send him away to keep him safe. She worried that Augustin's enemies might one day come to her home and hurt her son. Meanwhile, Pardo became curious and asked Augustin about his prayer at the church. Augustin said he only wished that the men who attacked him would leave him alone and never come back. Before continuing his mission, Pardo paused to clear his mind and then left the house. Later, he performed a strange ritual with his gun, like Russian roulette. He loaded 1 bullet, left the other 5 chambers empty, aimed the gun at his head, and pulled the trigger. Surviving meant he still had a chance at redemption by fighting the evil around him. If Pardo died, his mission would be over. That's why people called him the Redeemer. One afternoon, he went to the harbor to face the 4 men who had beaten Augustin the day before. Augustin watched nervously from a distance. The fight was unavoidable. Holding a small knife between his fingers, Pardo quickly slit the throat of one of his enemies. One of his enemies was killed when the spinning blades of a boat engine struck his head. After defeating all of them, Pardo took their belongings and donated them to the church. On his way to Antonia's house, he saw a group of armed men near the highway. Pardo stayed alert, but they ignored him, showing he wasn't their target. When he arrived, Augustin begged Pardo to protect him from the gunmen. That's when Pardo learned that the bag of money Augustin had thrown away a few days earlier actually belonged to a drug lord. Pardo agreed to help Augustin, but only if the money was returned to its rightful owner. Augustin agreed. To protect them from the drug gangs, Pardo hid Augustin and Antonia in a cave on a deserted beach. Then, risking his life, he went into a drug cartel and offered to tell them where the bag of money was. Pardo made one condition: once they got the bag, they had to leave the city. Their leader, Piedra, didn't trust him right away and wanted to check if he was telling the truth. With a gun pointed at him, Pardo said the bag was hidden inside a church. Hearing this, Piedra and his men went straight to the church. After searching everywhere, Piedra's men still couldn't find the bag. Furious, Piedra called the guards watching Pardo and ordered them to kill him for lying. But before they could act, Pardo attacked first and started a fight. Alone, he fought many of Piedra's armed henchmen. Fortunately, Pardo won the fight and killed all of them. Soon after, Piedra came home and was shocked to see all his men dead. He quickly went to his boss, Steve Braddock, to report what happened. It turned out that Steve was the real owner of the bag. After defeating Piedra's men, Pardo went back to the cave, where he found Augustin and Antonia counting the money. At first, Pardo was shocked by what he saw. Then he realized that Augustin had taken the bag Piedra had been looking for so Antonia could use the money to help her sick son. Pardo tried to take the bag. Antonia begged him to stop, pleading for the money, but Pardo ignored her. He was determined to return it to Piedra. However, as he went along, he started to hesitate. He thought about his past with his wife and child. Pardo stopped by the roadside to reflect. In the end, he went back to the cave and gave the money to Antonia and Augustin. There, he performed his Russian roulette ritual again. Luckily, the bullet didn't fire, and he survived. Sometime later, Pardo started watching the illegal activities of drug gangs. He carefully studied everything. One day, he followed a car that led him to a drug factory. From a distance, he observed what was happening inside. When the car he was tracking left the factory, Pardo got into his own vehicle to follow it. Unexpectedly, he had walked right into a trap. Pardo's surveillance was discovered. As he crossed the road to a warehouse, his car was shot at. There, he faced a member of a drug cartel and fought him. His opponent was strong, making the fight very difficult. In the end, Pardo defeated him with a deadly kick. That night, he went back to the cave to rest. There, Antonia came over and invited Pardo to talk. When she touched his back, memories of his wife came flooding back. Years ago, Pardo and his pregnant wife had been kidnapped. During that time, a man named Alacron, called the Scorpion, tortured her. He brutally disemboweled Pardo's wife while she screamed in agony, right in front of him. Alacron forced Pardo to make a terrible choice, either kill his wife himself or watch her be tortured to death. Pardo was tied up and powerless. With a gun pressed against him, they put a weapon in his hand and made him aim it at his wife. In that desperate moment, not wanting her to suffer any longer, Pardo was forced to pull the trigger. Back in the present, Pardo was driving toward the drug lord's headquarters. Meanwhile, at the hideout, Augustin dove into the water to take a boat docked at the harbor. He wanted to use it to escape the city. But just as he got on board, Alacron's men captured him. He dove back into the water to return to the hideout, but Alacron was already waiting nearby. At the same time, Pardo headed to a drug factory with his gun ready. He shot the guard at the gate and boldly went inside. A fierce gunfight broke out. When he reached one of the rooms, he ran into another guard and had to fight him hand to hand. His opponent fell after taking several strong blows. Pardo then went upstairs to the mafia boss's office. The room was messy, with bullet casings all over the floor. He walked toward the chair where the boss sat still, feeling that something was wrong. But before he could check, Alacron suddenly hit him hard from behind. Pardo was knocked unconscious and taken away. In a daze, he remembered the past, when he had faced his greatest enemy, Alacron. Back then, Pardo had a forbidden job. He was an assassin. He was hired to kill Alacron in his own home. But Alacron was too strong, and Pardo made a fatal mistake. During the struggle, Alacron's son ran out just as Pardo fired his gun. The bullet hit the boy, killing him instantly. Seeing his only child die, Alacron was filled with rage and swore revenge on Pardo. When Pardo woke up, he was standing in front of a seaside church, just as Alacron opened fire. Pardo saw Augustin and Antonia sitting nearby, terrified. Alacron threw a gun to Augustin and ordered him to kill himself. Antonia screamed in horror, and Alacron shot her in the leg. Using the distraction, Augustin tried to turn the gun on Alacron, but Alacron saw it and shot him in the head instantly. He then forced Antonia to pick up the gun and, threatening her, made her point it at her own head. Trembling with fear, Antonia obeyed. In that chaotic moment, Pardo was reminded of his wife. Gathering her last bit of courage, Antonia suddenly pointed the gun at Alacron. At the same time, Pardo kicked Alacron's weapon away. The two fought hand to hand in front of the church. They were evenly matched, exchanging strong punches and kicks. After a long struggle, Pardo finally defeated Alacron. Though still alive, Alacron was left powerless. Pardo chose not to kill him. In the final scene, he urged Alacron to repent and follow his path of fighting crime. He hoped that, one day after his death, Alacron could be reunited with his son in heaven. The film ends with a message about the possibility of change in human nature.